Hello everyone, it's Seattle Shifter here, and I am back with the next Forlorn Classics episode. And today, this one is actually fairly personal to me in my opinion because I used to play this game so much when I was way younger, at the closer range, when I was still very young and not my age now. But today, we're going to be talking about tabletop racing, the original 2013 mobile version. Now, this just to make the difference between the more recent one that came out in 2016 versus the one that came out in 2013, the mobile version. That's the one I'm the most nostalgic about. Now, I might talk about the other versions someday, but I'm mainly talking about this version right here. So, without further ado, I don't know if I can waste any more time, so yeah, let's get straight into this. Let's get some tabletop racing. Tabletop Racing was created back in 2013 by Playwrights Digital, the same studio that made the more recent tabletop racing games and the Nitro Edition one. But in this version that we're talking about today, there are over 8 tracks and 17 cars to choose from, and you can also use power-ups and you can also choose not to. So firstly, you have a standard career mode where you progress throughout the game pretty easily. First, you start off in this random looking like Chinese looking shop and stuff like that. And then you slowly progress to other locations like, a barbecue cookout track, a toy store, and also just a standard house where you live and stuff like that. So first of all, this game's gameplay and presentation and the general graphics are actually pretty decent for the most part because the reflections and shadows are really good, and the reflections themselves and the locations themselves can be a bit dull at times, but when the sun comes out, more specifically at the Chinese restaurant level, it actually does seem pretty lively and bright for the most part. And there are also the different types of vehicles that you can play as, with personally being the Tokyo Zero, the Pantera GT, and the Whippy Kaye being my personal favorites out of the whole game because really just out of nostalgia, but also because their designs are so cool looking. And speaking of the power-ups, you have the bombs, the missiles, the electricity, the EMP really being, and also just, certain different abilities that the vehicles have. For example, we have the certain different tires that cars can use during races. We have the jumper ones, which allows you to jump over a specific area or a shortcut. The piece wheels, which allows you to remove any other opponent's weaponry. And yeah, that's kind of really it. And there's also the drift tires, you can't forget about that, which can be really useful for drift events. So that could be pretty useful as well. As for the standard career mode, I would say that it's pretty basic, which most of the time you'll have to race against other opponents, time trials, or even a certain thing where you have to race against, chase another opponent to tag them before the timer runs out and you don't get those 3 stars. And speaking of which, this game also has a star system where you pretty much have to get 3 stars to fully win the stage, or just get enough stars or you actually have enough to, beat it. So, yeah. And now let's talk about the game's soundtrack, really. And personally, this soundtrack is actually pretty decent. It has some pretty good bangers in it, like the opening theme song when you open the game. And I especially like the credits after you beat it because it just sounds so chill sounding, and it really just helps you contemplate the fact that you actually beat the game. Well, not contemplate like it's a bad thing. It's just that it helps you feel a sense of completion, That's why I like the ending theme credits song so much, because it's really just so good. And there's also different tracks for the barbecue cookout place. That one's pretty good too. And the toy store especially is really awesome because it really just feels so action-packed. And now as for the actual vehicles and their stats, what they can do, personally, I think they could have gone much faster in my opinion, because as for the game itself, it's not like they can't go super fast, it's just that they kind of refuse to boost the speed a little bit. So that's really one of my first criticisms when it comes to this game. And there's also the fact that there could have been way more variety to the tracks, and just more tracks in general than just 8 of them, because if you played all 8 of them, it can get pretty repetitive and boring pretty quickly. So that's what I mean by that. So anyways, basically, yeah, that's it for my coverage of Tabletop Racing, the original, like, 2013 version, because that's kind of really it, because besides from the progression system being okay, and there's also the championships, which I really liked. We have the Twin Cam one, the Spartan Plug Cup, and the Turbo Championship, so those were pretty nice. So, other than that, this game is pretty alright. So I highly recommend you try and check it out. I mean, if you still can, because the game is still available to be downloaded on, APK, not Google Play or the App Store, because those are likely replaced with the newer version than Digital Rise Entertainment, wants to pretty much do anyways. But yeah, that's gonna be my coverage of the original Tabletop Racing game. And another thing worth noting that this game was also released on the PS Vita as well, so it's not just a mobile game, it's also just, technically a PlayStation game too, so that's pretty cool to know about. So, anyways, as I've been keeping saying, that's pretty much it for my coverage of Tabletop Racing. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and goodbye.